Yo, what's up guys? So we're back with another video about scanning networks with Nmap. What is Nmap? Nmap stands for Network Mapper and it's part of the reconnaissance phase of a attack. So the four main stages of attacks are reconnaissance, where you gather the necessary information to perform the attack. Exploitation is where you get access to the network or system. Privilege escalation is where you escalate your privileges. Say you have a normal user compromised, then this stage is where you move up to admin or a higher privilege. And lateral movement is movement across a network to increase your persistence. So persistence is the ability for hackers to maintain their presence in a network or system. So that's a basic overview. We'll move on to the later stages in other videos to come. So how Network Mapper works is it sends specifically crafted packets and analyzes the responses from different systems. So these packets are formulated so the system responds as if it were running regular services to gain more intelligence about the system. So common uses for Nmap is host discovery, what services the machine runs, and the operating systems being used on the machines. Before continuing our discussion about Nmap, we need to understand what firewalls and ports are. So firewalls are basically just filters that determine which traffic should enter the network and which traffic should be blocked. So this is useful to keep malicious payloads from attackers out of the network while being able to access the internet. It's usually placed outside the network while filtering incoming traffic. So as you can see in this diagram, we have the internet right here, and then the firewall filtering out traffic, and then the leftover traffic is forwarded into the private network. How a firewall works is that there are specified ports in the firewall, and these are basically holes in the security to allow certain services to communicate through the firewall. To help understand how ports work in firewalls, we have this nifty little diagram here. So this whole castle represents the firewall. So the wall represents the entire firewall with these specific ports open. So as you can see, there's port 80 right here, and port 80 allows HTTP traffic to come in and out. So this is represented by this messenger right here sending the packets that pertain to HTTP. Over here we have a similar situation where port 20 allows FTP or File Transport Protocol in and out of the castle walls. However, SSH does not have a port open or a hole in the wall, so it's unable to enter in and pass traffic through. Now that we have covered firewalls and ports, we can move on to the types of Nmap scans. The first scan we're going to be talking about is the SYN Scan. The SYN Scan stands for the Synchronized Scan, and it is stealthy and quickly scans ports on a certain machine. The way that the SYN Scan works is by an incomplete three-way handshake. So the three-way handshake establishes a connection between two machines and ensures that traffic makes its way between them. So in this diagram, machine A is us as the attacker sending a SYN synchronized packet to B, which is the target system. And then if the port is open, then B sends a SYN and acknowledge packet back to us. That's how we know that the port's open. And then we close the connection after that. If the port is closed, however, it skips the second transfer and it just closes the connection from B. So this is a way that we could tell if ports are open on a certain system. The second scan we'll be covering is the TCP scan, or the Transmission Control Protocol scan. So this scan is usually used when the SYN scan isn't available and it completes the connection between the two hosts. This is a diagram of the TCP scan, and as you can see, it's very similar to the SYN scan. However, instead of A closing the connection, it sends another acknowledgement to B, forming a complete connection. If the port is closed, it's the same as the SYN scan, and B sends a packet that closes the connection. The last scan we'll be going over is known as the UDP scan. So the UDP scan stands for User Datagram Protocol, and it's a little slower and more difficult than TCP, but it might catch some missed ports from the TCP scan. An important note is to differentiate TCP and UDP. TCP, since it establishes a connection between the hosts, are used when there needs to be all the packets delivered. So this could be downloads or when you need all the contents of a file. UDP, however, is used for streaming, where not all the packets need to be transferred, and you could afford to lose some information. The UDP scan looks something like this. So as you can see, as A, the attacker, sends a UDP probe packet to B, there's no response, because there's no established connection between the hosts. So this is how we know the port's open. If the port's closed, once we send the UDP probe packet, then we get a ICMP destination port unreachable packet, meaning that the port isn't open. To demonstrate how these scans look like, we have to log into Kali Linux on our virtual machine, and we have to log in as the root user. And we could do nmap and then ss 10.10.1.10, which is the target system. So this is just the SYN scan right now. So enter. The SYN scan should cover most of the ports that we would find in the TCP and UDP scan. So basically, this is all the information that comes back. So we could see these are the ports using TCP, TCP, the states are open, and then the service they're running. So we have FTP on port 21 using TCP, and SSH, Telnet, and a lot more. So if we wanted to do a TCP scan, it's very similar, nmap-st, and then our target system. This should bring up less information than the SYN scan, but still very useful. As you can see, this looks pretty similar to the SYN scan, but if we want to find UDP connections, that's when we use the UDP scan. So nmap, su, and then 10.10.1.10. And then this should bring up the smallest amount of information. Yep, so we could see one port using UDP is open, which is the domain. So this is just a little bit about the scanning techniques or types we could use with Nmap. Adding on to the types of scans, we also have different Nmap flags. So the first flag we're going to be covering is -sv, which attempts to find the service version information running on the machine. This is useful when trying to execute exploits that are specific to one service. We also have -o, which attempts to find the operating system and version that the victim's running. -p, in case you want to specify a certain amount of ports or specific ports. -t, 0 through 5, which determines how fast you want to scan. So T0 is very slow, and this is when you really want to be sneaky, and T5 is very fast and requires a lot of bandwidth, and it's very noisy on the network. And then our last is -a, which basically does all of the above. To see what these flags look like, we're logged back into Kali Linux, and we can do nmap and then self-scan, and then our first flag, sv 10.10.1.10. This should bring up all the service version information from our host. This is what it should look like when the scan finishes running. We have all the information that's similar to the normal SYN scan. However, we have all the versions running on the machine. So for example, this is the version for FTP, SSH version, Telnet, So this is just a little bit more information about what services are running. Moving on to the next flag, the -O flag, we'll do nmap ss-o, and then our target. As you can see, we have all the SYN Scan information up here again. And for this example, we don't have any operating system matches. However, if the operating system is detectable by Nmap, it'll be listed below right here. Our next flag, the port specifier, is -P and then maybe 2350, and then our target. And this will cut down the time if you only want to scan certain ports in a range. Also, you could do nmap -p-, and then this specifies all the ports running on the system. This will take a little bit longer than specifying the ports because it's going to scan all possible ports. Okay, so now that the scan finished, we can see how many more ports this scanned from the normal SYN scan. So this is useful for finding hidden ports. It takes a little bit longer, but if you're trying to be secure, then you might want to scan all of the ports possible. Moving on to our last scan, we have the -A, which does everything that we listed above. So we could combine this with the -T5 to make it a quick scan, -A, and then our host. Now that the scan finished running, as you can see, we have a lot more information about the system we're targeting. We have the ports, whether it's open or not, the service and the version, and other protocols listed that Nmap could find. That concludes this video. I hope you found it helpful.